Let's get to the news. And the first news story is a sad news story. And that is that I'll go ahead and call him comic book legend. But
Absolutely.
Steve Dillon, from one of the co-creators of Preacher, was currently drawing the Punisher over at Marvel. He has passed away at the age of 54. And
Yeah.
this is one that I didn't realize until like I was looking. I'm like, wait, oh, he was doing Punisher. Oh, damn. Becky Clooner needs to find a new artist. Now, like it wasn't like that cynical, but it was just like, shit, how is whoever is going to replace him on that Punisher book going to be able to top that?
Oh, I don't think
And all
anybody
that.
is ever going to even try to top Steve Dillon. His artwork is kind of one of a kind. I mean, I discovered him in Preacher. That's where I first got introduced to his work, working with Garth. But he had worked on Hellblazer before that, and they went on and they did a very important kind of seminal Punisher run when Marvel Knights was happening, which is when Joe Quesada and Jimmy Palmiotti were taking over, basically made an imprint within Marvel, and that led to Joe becoming publisher in chief of Marvel down the road.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Steve's one of those guys. It's sad how often this happens, where you lose somebody in the comic industry, and it's not just that you're losing a great artist or a great writer or something, but often these people are just so beloved, and nobody has bad things to say about Steve Dillon. They only have great stories to tell of what kind of person he is. Not to mention his body of work, but just the guy, like just talking to him, knowing him, hanging out and partying with him, getting drunk with him, those kinds of things. Like, this is it's not necessarily that it's a tight-knit group, and that's kind of the thing, is that for everybody to have all these stories, all these beloved memories about him, that's a big deal, because you can just kind of sit in your own corner or work with the people that you work with. But I mean, Neil Gaiman has nice things to say about him when he was a young writer and just starting out before he landed Sandman. Seth Rogen obviously has things to say about him because the whole Preacher series is based around his and Garth's run on the book. But just so many people love Steve. And even if you're just a fan, even if you're just one of those guys that, like, I just like to see his drawings, there's nobody else really like him, because his stuff isn't overly like stylized comic booky. It feels realistic. Like, so much of the beginning of Preacher was people talking, just kind of sitting around talking, but it felt real. It felt like you were looking at real people on the page, and that's why people have been begging for a movie or a TV adaptation of this for so long, because you just see these characters and you kind of know who they should be up on the screen. Steve's work is magical, but then he could do the really bizarre, grotesque stuff. He could take you off into a completely different direction by doing things like creating Arseface, creating some of the weird characters, doing the stuff he did in Punisher, like with the fight between Punisher and the Russian, and the whole scene of I remember in particular a scene where Punisher is using Spider-Man as a shield, as a human shield. So as this guy is trying to punch Punisher, Punisher's just holding Spider-Man up, and Spider-Man's getting bashed in the face over and over again. And when Spider-Man wakes up, he's like, what happened to me? And Punisher's like, we had a team up. You were great. It was very strange for me to see Steve go from doing the stuff he was doing in Preacher, which was in a lot of ways very realistic, very down to earth, but also fantastical. But then to see him go and tackle what was superheroes, but in a way that was complementary to who he was as an artist. And I think that's a really great statement about Steve's relationship with Garth, is Garth wrote stuff towards what Steve's art was, and they
Yeah.
work so well together. And obviously, Garth Smith's the only person he ever worked with, and it's not to say that they can't do things without each other, but there was something really magical about them working together.
No, yeah.
That
I want to give some stats here for you on his career. So his career spans across 5 decades and 2 continents. His first professional work came when he was 16 years old in the debut issue of Hulk Weekly for Marvel's UK subsidiary, and he would later go on to do work for 2008 or appear in. His art would appear in stories for 2000 AD, Doctor Who Weekly, the classic Warrior anthology, and was including a chapter of Alan Moore's groundbreaking Miracle Man series. Um, he did both sides here. He didn't just do Marvel, but he also did DC. He did stuff for Animal Man, Atom. Vertigo is probably where most people know him because of Preacher. And I mean, and also, I mean, the dude was great. And in addition to his artwork, Dillon will also be remembered for co-creating and co-editing the British comics anthology Deadline with Brett Ewan in 1988, which published early work from Gorilla's co-creator Jamie Hewlett. So think about this: Steve Dillon didn't do what he did, we wouldn't have the Gorillas. I mean
Tank Girl.
that's
Tank
something to
Girl
look.
was another
Yeah,
Deadline strip.
yeah,
Yeah, a lot of people say, I heard people saying that they were seeing Steve's zine, which was his work before he got picked up by an actual publisher, that he's doing himself. And at 15 years old, they were like, "Who is this guy? We need to find out more about him." They were emulating
yeah.
his work. He's. I mean, what we think of as comic book art in America is very different from what happens in the UK. But it was at a point in time that in the 90s that a lot of that stuff was coming over to the US and became like a bigger thing. It became the big thing for a lot of titles. And obviously there was the Image guys too that were doing their own stuff that were very straight superhero, but the whole Vertigo movement was around people like Steve and that like-mindedness of telling stories that weren't about flash so much as like solid storytelling about drawing stuff on the page
Yep.
that pulled you into it in a completely different way. Yeah, and just all around terrific person. It's very sad to see this happen. And 54 is, I know I'm 45. It's really close to my age, honestly.
Yeah.
That's way too young.
Well, no, and I mean, B sort of has it right when he says "fuck 2016," because I mean, you look at the beginning of the year, and it's almost like, all right, we're losing a lot of great Brits because I mean, we lost Bowie, we lost Alan Rickman. Now we're losing Steve Dillon. There's probably others that I'm not even thinking of that are Brits. We lost Prince, but he's American, and it's like, good lord, man, do we need more knights or something over there? like yeah, I mean, this is just horrible. Yeah, Prince was from another planet. Um, but it's just like, can we get done? Can people quit dying now? Sort of deal. But yeah, I mean,
Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way.
it does if I say it does. Damn it. Um, so on to the next story. The next story is that Deadpool 2 loses director Tim Miller over creative differences. So this one was one that I was like, is there really a story here? And then Beat pointed out, well, we're talking about it an awful lot right now before the show. So I'm like, touche, touche, sir. Okay, so we will talk about it. Um, so I guess him and Ron Reynolds couldn't decide over who to cast as Cable.
That's part of it, and that's rumor and stuff. I don't think there's been an actual statement released on it, but yes, one of the things that people say has caused some disagreement between Ryan and Tim was that Tim wanted Kyle Chandler from Friday Night Lights to play Cable, who is obviously, might be age appropriate. I don't know too much about Kyle's work, but I could see that it could work. It's just not who I would picture as Cable, like as my first jumping to, oh, it's going to be this guy. But then that said, so many of the people that have been used in the Marvel and the Fox films based around Marvel properties have not been the people that were my first go-to is, oh yeah, of course, other than Iron Man, other than the inspired choice of like, yeah, we're going to get Robert Downey Jr. to play Iron Man. Oh shit, that makes total fucking sense. A lot of the other people were like, oh, well, we'll have to wait and see. And that's the internet being kind. But the other part of this, as I understand it, was Miller wanted to go more stylized, wanted to do something that was a little bit more straight superhero after doing what they did with the first film. And Ryan's like, no, we have to keep the comedy up. We have to keep the hardcore R rating up. We have to do all these things. We have to continue doing what we did and just like make it bigger, make it better. Although he had some weird tweet that he deleted after the fact that was basically, where would you like to see the big fight scene happen in Deadpool 2? Choice A is a bridge, or choice B is a bridge. And that's kind of been interpreted as Miller wasn't coming up with new ideas or like any kind of expansive ideas, since there was such a huge scene with a bridge in the first one. Ryan felt like we weren't getting anywhere new with this. I don't know. I mean, this is all inside baseball, and it really is hard to say one way or the other if it's the right choice or the wrong choice. Obviously, it's easier to replace the director than it is the star, and not just the star of the movie, but someone who's been such a vocal proponent of the movie for so long, who pushed it to happen, someone who has been in so many different kinds of ad campaigns to help sell the movie, has really put himself out there as an actor, like went above and beyond, which is not to say that Tim Miller's part was not extraordinarily important to the success of the first film. Visually, it's a great movie. Everything about Deadpool works in a way that I would not have expected from a Deadpool movie unless you get it 100% right. And they got it 100% right easily. And to have it to be the most successful R-rated movie ever is a big deal. So Fox went and put their backing behind Ryan, which is probably not the wrong thing to do. But it is too bad, because when you see something that's hit that level of success, you kind of want to get the team back together again. You want them to get the chance to do the next thing, up their game, whatever. And maybe sometimes it's better not to do that. Maybe it's better to bring somebody else in. So the real question becomes, who, one, should be Cable, I guess, in Ryan Reynolds' eyes, and two, who should be directing this sequel?
Yeah. I mean, I look at Kyle Chandler, and if this is who they were, Tim Miller was wanting, he's too young. I could see him, playing a different mutant. But for like I could see him playing like Forge, maybe.
Keep in mind, Kyle Chandler is 51 years old.
He looks young though.
Well, and it's not like there's ever been the use of prosthetics or makeup to make people seem younger.
No, yeah.
Or older.
Because I look at, I looked at some of the fan casting, and they had who was it? The guy from the Lights Out and Avatar.
Yeah, I can't remember his name, but I know who you're talking about, and he has pitched himself very hard at this. The problem is that he's not looked at as like a terrific actor. Although Lights Out did very well. Stephen Lang, we're being told by Evan in our chat.
That's why
thank
we
you, producer Evan.
No bucks.
Yeah. Stephen Lang, Ron Perlman's been mentioned. There's a lot of people who are like iconically, this guy would be a great Cable, but would they work well in the sense of what Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool would want as against a Cable? Is it someone that he wants to or could work with? There's a lot of different things you can look at. Plus, they want somebody who's going to be young enough to probably launch another franchise with Cable. The expectation
Yeah.
is that this guy is going to go on to do X Force, and it's all great if we got the guy who looks like Cable as, 50 years old, 60 years old, whatever. But we don't want to have a Dumbledore situation on our hands. We don't want to have somebody who is just here for one film and then has to be replaced next movie in, because not because they're going to die necessarily, but because maybe it's physicality of these roles is very difficult. Again, the Robert Downey Jr. example, the guy is in really great shape, uh, but at the same time, most of his parts, as far as the action, are done CGI with a suit. Like, we're seeing a close up of his face, so we buy into the fact that he's in the suit, but he's not really in the suit. Uh, so do they need somebody who is maybe a little bit younger but can play older, or can
Yeah, yeah.
play stern and serious? And maybe that's who this guy was. But you've got to have a good relationship with, and which I'm not saying he doesn't. You got to have a good relationship with the other star of the film. You've got to be able to have a good interplay between the two of the characters. And some things work and some things don't. And if they did tests and stuff, and Ryan's like, I'm not feeling us working together, I don't know that the audience is going to feel this either, then maybe he just wasn't the right choice. And I get that. The other thing is, who would you like to see direct Deadpool 2? Because the internet is speaking right now about who they think should direct Deadpool 2, and I don't know that that's ever going to happen.
Yeah, they're wanting like what is it? It's
Quentin
Quentin
Tarantino.
Tarantino. But didn't we say there was another one that people were wanting?
There's quite a few.
Yeah.
I think Matthew Vaughn has come up. Obviously, people who've done other big actiony comic booky stuff
I could
make a
see Matthew
sense.
Vaughn. I could see Matthew Vaughn because like the person I would cast is someone who can blend comedy with action like Tim Miller did with the first Deadpool. Because I freaking laughed my ass off in that movie when I saw it. I think I saw it opening weekend, if not the next weekend. And it's one of those movies that, it yeah, they had the action sequences, especially in the third act. They had the okay, let's shut the fuck up and actually fight here moments. But but then before that there was a whole bunch of comedy. And so I honestly think they're going to need someone who can do that good blend. And
Beatmaster is saying Kevin Smith. The only problem I would have with that is Kevin gets comedy well. I don't know that he does action well, and certainly not the huge budgeted action that we've seen from this.
yeah.
Kevin's biggest, like, I think, mainstream release was, oh god, it was Cop Out, and that was not a great example of what Kevin would do in a film. His other stuff, his more personal stuff, I think is better. And if they want to keep it lean and mean, sure. But I think that there's something for a director who already has that kind of background and aesthetic quality in place. People who are really campaigning right now are the Soska sisters, who are the twin sisters who've done things like American Mary and Dead Hooker in a Trunk. They are big Deadpool fans. They are up and coming directors. They're also the hosts of that Elevator series on Sci-Fi. And there
No.
is, well, I mean, I'm not saying
The,
they make the show, but it's a sci-fi show. But they're people who they've got the right mentality for it. They're definitely talented, and it's possible. It would be interesting because it's young, hungry directors who are going to come into it and be able to be kind of somewhat like yes men or women to what Fox is going to have to say, and certainly to what Ryan himself is going to want to say about it. Uh, The question is who's going to come in, who's going to have the ability to have a good vision, but make that vision work for these other parties who obviously have a lot at stake in it, and enjoy
Yeah.
being part of a franchise, which is again going to hopefully lead into a bigger franchise down the road.
Here, I'm gonna throw one out. It probably wouldn't work, but I could see some things working here if it did. Um, what about Edgar Wright? Because Edgar Wright does comedy, and he did, with Scott Pilgrim, he did do action very well, and the scenes from Ant-Man that
Absolutely.
they
If
still use
we
him.
have 10 years for him to work on it and then get pissed off and walk away, then surely I think Edward Wright is a great. No, I would love that. I would absolutely love that. But I don't know if he is going to want to get back into that kind of deal again. I think it's kind of like the Joss Whedon thing. Joss Whedon is making noises of like, oh, I'd love to do a Star Wars film now that I'm seeing what's happening with Rogue One, because I don't want to deal with all that shared universe bullshit of like I'm part of this like heavy corporation thing crushing down on me. Oh wait, you can do stuff over on the side. You can do stuff and have it not be like Luke and Leia and Han and all the big shit, but do something that's like a side story with other characters. That'd be fucking awesome. And I think that's where Edgar Wright is probably at now too. He's like, I've done
Yeah.
really well with my own movies, or I've done things that were other people's properties, but I had most of the creative control over. But the Marvel thing didn't click with him, and not for any fault of who he is as a director. Um, but I get it. I understand why. And I don't know if he would be like, well, then I'll just run over to fucking DC at Time Warner,
I
or I'll
could
run over to Fox, or I'll run over to Sony and still have their dicks in my ear every day I turn around. No,
but I could see if they did Edgar Wright and it just for Deadpool 2. There's more jokes that they could be cracking. Like, and you thought like Ryan, like Deadpool just going, and you thought this would take 10 years to make
I
or
mean,
something
they
like
could
that.
definitely make those kind of jokes, and they could make it good. My biggest concern is it the same thing again?
Yeah.
And what is the kind of movie that they want to make for Deadpool 2? If he wants to keep it, Ryan wants to keep it in the same vein of like not super giant budget effects, but have that kind of lowbrow, still street level kind of story and humor, but involving characters like Cable, which is going to be tough because Cable does not lend himself to that as much. Cable is a military guy. Cable is a character from the future. Cable has
Mhm.
pretty heavy power set, a lot of guns, but that's not all the Cable is. Cable has a ship that flies around. I mean, if they want to utilize Cable the right way, that he's Cable, um, they need to change the tone of the movie for that. And so I just worry if someone comes in and is like, we really love Deadpool 1, let's make Deadpool 2 just more of Deadpool 1. What we've seen the best examples of what Marvel's done has been giving each film a different feel, a different theme, kind of striking them differently. The biggest one's obviously the difference between Captain America 1, 2, and 3. Although 3, I would argue, is more of just an Avengers movie done in Captain
Yeah.
America. Um, so we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to see how it goes. But
No,
I
yeah.
I I feel bad because I like what Tim Miller did. I have absolutely no complaints about what that guy did in this film, and obviously he's got the ability now to go on and pick what he wants to do next. Apparently, just not Deadpool 2.
The According to Fox, the breakup is amicable
Yeah,
between the two, and he's gonna work on um a a movie. I forget what the name of the movie's called, but he's gonna be working on a movie um called it's stalling. It's called um Influx. That's what I thought it was, and it's an adaptation of a science fiction novel by Daniel Suarez.
Yeah. And I mean,
So I mean, it's not like
there's
you know
still
taking time.
other X-Men characters that are both out or coming out with films. The rumored, not rumored, the
So
promised
Iceman,
and lied to us over and over again. Like, is this happening? Is this not happening? Gambit movie, which I think has
yeah.
changed directors multiple times, might still happen. There's the New Mutants movie that has been rumored as well. There's an X-Force movie if Cable moves from this over to that. There's so much potential for him to still do things in this universe, even, and maybe even work with Ryan again. Just not this particular movie. So I'm glad that people are keeping the peace too.
Yeah, and the so on to the far final news story, and that is that the all of season 2 of Jessica Jones will have something in common with Queen Sugar, and that is that every episode will be directed by a woman. And I say this because the showrunner, Melissa Rosenberg, was at a she was on a panel for Transforming Hollywood 7, Diversifying Entertainment, which was held at USC's Annenberg School for Communication and Journalism. And they talked about how I think they had for season 1 they had um like they just had like people who they wanted come in, and then they're like someone mentioned, well, why not do all women? And she's like, oh well, yeah, I guess we could do that. And so this whole thing of there only being women puts it in a very rare category with, like I mentioned, with Ava DuVernay's Queen Sugar, which airs on OWN, is the only other one that is in there. And obviously she didn't divulge anything about Jessica Jones season 2, but it's pretty cool to think that. And I'm honestly, I hope it's more of these women are going to tell the best story, not stunt casting in that.
I I agree. I think we all. I don't think it's like, hey, you over there, you've got a camera and a vagina. Come direct Jessica Jones. I don't expect it to be that at all. I do. I have feelings about some of these things, like can only transgendered people play transgendered characters? Can only women direct shows like Jessica Jones? And I think that for a time, yes, we should try to do those things. We should make that happen because it just hasn't. It's not like we're giving up so much by making this happen now. When we have this chance to do so, uh, and if it works out, then great. Then maybe more shows will invest in women directors and producers, and have shows that are about women primarily, and not worry about the fact that, oh, but who's going to be the guy factor, and how are we going to get men to watch this? Like, you and I both watched Jessica Jones
Yeah,
and loved it, and it was absolutely terrific storytelling. And I don't think that there's, I mean, my wife didn't watch it because she's not really interested in comic movies. At some point I might try to entice her to get into it, because I think it's just a really good season of television in general.
yep.
But I do think somewhere down the road, hopefully it becomes that it doesn't have to be this way, because we're trying to get people to open their minds to it.
Hmm.
And it's just like, if it happens, it happens because it's naturally happening. But we're such a long way from things like that naturally happening, that, yeah, if we have to give a little bit of a push here and there, let's do that for right now. At the same time, I write stories. I've always been someone who enjoy telling stories. People who act obviously enjoy playing people who are different from themselves. And the idea of saying, well, you can't play this part, or you can't write this story because you aren't like the people that you're writing about, or you're not like the person that you're playing in the role, that's very limiting to what the dream is of being a storyteller or being an actor. uh, and I think that we have to kind of understand that yes, not every comic starring female characters should be written by women, just like every comic starring male characters should be written by men. That doesn't need to be the case. It's ridiculous to even acknowledge that as a thing. Um, but when we have the ability to have women just be as looked at professionally as men are, um, then that's when we can start making those fights. But I'm still going to write what I write, and I still think people are going to act and the parts are going to act, and it's just nice to see a little bit more of this happening for right now.
No, yeah, definitely,
Hopefully
definitely.
a lot more.
Yeah. I mean, I've always been the person to have, let's get the right people to make the best content for the thing that you're wanting to ingest.
Exactly. Although at the same time, we have just gotten to assume that the right people are dudes because that's all we've had to choose from, or
No,
that's all
yeah,
we've let do the parts. So maybe we need to expand our search.
yeah,
Is what this is doing.
no, yeah, definitely. Well, that is it for the news.